Alan.
To me. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Alan Moore. I'm stepping in for Tom Wiseman, who's on the agenda but can't be here today. And I'm the Data Research Director at IDOX Geospatial. Won't go into my bio. My grey hair belies 40-year career in geospatial. By way of introduction, we're going to talk to you about the Open Maps for Europe project. It's basically a 6-year programme of work we've been involved in with an organisation called Eurogeographics. Anyone heard of Eurogeographics? One or two? Okay, good. And essentially the project we've been working on is to bring a suite of authoritative open data to the market and supporting Eurogeographics in that initiative over the last 6 years or so. So we're just going to give you a quick run through the story, essentially. Amy, our data manager, will talk a bit more about some of the data products, some of the technical side of the work we've been doing. Don't ask me any technical questions because I won't be able to answer them, but hopefully Amy will. Also, who's heard of IDOX? Okay, a few more, but not everybody. So, for those who don't know, IDOX, basically software business. We build enterprise-grade systems for a range of industries in the UK, particularly in local government, central government, and sort of social care sort of environment. Globally, it also includes products on transportation and particularly on engineering information management, so for big infrastructure projects. So large-scale enterprise process-driven systems is what IDOX is best known for. I'll come back to the GIS and geospatial bit in a minute. Eurogeographics essentially is an international not-for-profit organisation. It's a membership organisation. It represents 90% of Europe's national mapping agencies, cadastral authorities, and land registration agencies. And as a membership body, it's there to represent their interests in terms of ensuring they're complying with best practice, feeding into policy sort of discussions, adoption of standards, collaborating across that whole community in terms of knowledge sharing and experience sharing. But one of the key things they do on behalf of that membership group is aggregate data from those underpinning agencies into a pan-European national sort of data set. So that's ultimately one of the key things that Eurogeographics is here to do. About IDOX Geospatial, so just a very brief plug for IDOX Geospatial. 4 years ago, IDOX didn't have a geospatial sort of team presence or division, but we now do. And that's through a process of strategic acquisitions. 5 companies, essentially, IDOX acquired in the last few years to give us a suite of capabilities in the GIS and geospatial space. And that covers everything from software, data, professional services, support, training, etc. So it's the whole gamut, geo as a service, essentially. On the back of that, therefore, we created a new division in IDOX Group just, less than 12 months ago now, bringing those teams together. And we've now got over 100 people in the IDOX Geospatial division. And we're still growing, and we're still acquiring, and we're still looking around. So back to the story. Mentioned Eurogeographics. One of the key things they do is the aggregation of data on behalf of their members. They've got a number of data products. We'll touch on one or two of those in a minute. But behind the scenes, there's a very extensive sort of process and business model whereby they collate the data from each of those individual organizations, validate it, edge match it, harmonize it, pull it all together essentially into those pan-European data sets. So there's a big operation sits behind the production of these national pan-European data sets. And it's all driven by the members themselves. So essentially the members themselves put resources in place to do all of that process, quality management and production management of that activity, all facilitated by Eurogeographics as the coordinator essentially across the work that's undertaken there. And it's all very successful. And up until 2019-20, these 3 products on the end here were the primary products. They were put into the market as commercially licensed products, essentially to help fund the operation, to keep them up to date and maintain them. So that was probably one of the key revenue streams, essentially, for Eurogeographics at that point in time. But obviously, I'm sure we're all aware in the audience, over the last 10, 20 years, there's been a big shift towards, making data open. And Eurogeographics were not, unaware of that, clearly. They were getting a lot of pressure from their end users, a lot of pressure from the agencies themselves, which meant they had to look again at their whole data strategy, essentially. So they kicked that off in, as I say, sort of late 2019-20, thereabouts. partly because, yeah, a lot of the open data products out there, things like OSM, had matured quite extensively, and people were starting to use those instead of the UG graphics products. The products that they had at that point in time were more small scale products. There was a lot of alternative options that were already free. And also under the Open Data Directive, the individual organizations themselves were under pressure to make their national data open. So you couldn't really make the national data open and not make the pan-European aggregation of that data open as well. So they had to face up to that challenge, if you like. That involved quite an extensive process of discussion, negotiation, consultation across those members, essentially, and ultimately led to a revised European data strategy, essentially, for the organisation, which was an open data first approach, essentially. And a single open data license that would then sit behind the product. So the link's on the bottom there, based on the Creative Commons BY license, essentially, is what it is. Sounds good. But how do we get that to the market, and how do we start to change our processes around all of that? So essentially, they sought funding from the European Commission, got a 75% grant fund, essentially, under the Connected Europe facility, essentially to initiate the Open Maps for Europe programme. OME1 first phase, 2020 to 2022, and that's when we got involved. At that point, well, I was actually with Thinkware, one of those acquired businesses. So we were, in fact, the technology partner selected by Eurographics Graphics at that point in time. And our role was essentially to provide the underlying spatial data infrastructure and platform to host, manage, and distribute that open data, and to develop the geoportal, and essentially a mechanism to take that data into the market, make it easy to find, easy to access, easy to use, etc. That's kind of where we got involved. It was a very successful first phase. They won the BGO award in 2022, and they got lots of plaudits. Portal itself, links down the bottom if you can see it. This is still the portal. Was a lot of time and energy and effort went into the design and build of this. A lot of user design, sort of story mapping, wireframing, iterative development, and so on, involving Eurographics Graphics and a subset of those members. So you can imagine it's quite an extensive exercise to bring everyone onto the same page. But essentially, we now have kind of mobile responsive web application whereby you can go and find all the data. You can sign up and get access to the services, download the data, etc. So feel free to go and have a look at that later. I'm not going to go into technical because that's not my bag. Alistair in the front row here, put hand up, Alistair, so everybody knows who you are. If you've got any questions on the platform itself, which is very much built on key open source components and open source libraries, and Alistair was principally the architect of that, and I'm sure could answer questions offline if you're interested. The key thing from the Eurographics Graphics point of view was we as Think had already designed and built this platform. And what that meant is they could then accelerate the speed to market to take their open data into the market. So this was essentially the foundation of the spatial platform that sits under the Eurographics Graphics delivery mechanism, with some customization and configuration, but ultimately give them a very quick start, and also clearly don't have to invest heavily in the complete design build of a whole new data platform to meet their needs. Following the success of OME1, we now aptly named OME2. So they put in another grant fund sort of submission to the Commission, and again were successful in that process. Eurographics Graphics, again, was the primary partner to take that on behalf of their membership. And that was partly then to support, maintain, enhance, and further develop the geoportal and the processes around the ingestion and delivery of a lot of the open data that came in at that point. But it also introduced two sort of new key requirements, which Amy will talk to in 1 second. Two new data products, essentially. One is this HVLSP, as it's aptly known, high-value, large-scale prototype. And the other was to progress the development of the open cadastral map, which we started to prototype in the first phase, but now we wanted to bring in a lot more countries and create better coverage, essentially, of the open cadastral map. So I'll hand over to Amy, who can tell you a bit more.
Okay, so I've been involved since OME2. So the HVLSP stands for a little bit more than that. It's the high value, large scale pan-European prototype. So it is part of the Open Maps of Europe 2 project funded by the EU's Digital Europe programme, and it provides a harmonised, multi-themed topographic dataset at a 1 to 10,000 scale. built from authoritative national sources, as Alan has said. So the HVLSP shows how high value data can be openly shared under a single license, supporting the EU policy goals and aligning the UN GGIM Europe core data recommendations. So the first release of this data, it covered Belgium, France, and the Netherlands, just specifically with two themes, and the themes were administrative units and transport. And so the coverage is going to grow to 10 countries by the end of this year, and also add the hydrography theme. And you can access the data. It's available by theme, country, or admin unit via geopackage download, or OGC web services, including WFS, WMS, and WMTS. Okay. So the prototype uses PostgreSQL backend for reliable geospatial data storage. The national data sets are edge matched by IGN France before it comes to us, so that it has seamless cross-border continuity, and we ingest it using OGR to OGR for standardization. The data is served through GeoServer by WMS, WFS, and WMTS services, and we use map proxy caches in WMS and WMTS to boost the performance and the responsiveness. In terms of the styling ensures a consistent look. So we've already got some products up there. We've got the Euro regional map and we've got the Euro global map. So we wanted to make sure that everything looked familiar. We adapted that to a 1 to 10,000 scale to deliver a clean, legible map. It was developed iteratively in QGIS, and we exported SLDs for GeoServer. The styles manage a scale-dependent visibility, and we had to prioritize attribution and clear symbolization to maintain a cohesive design. We also use PostGIS materialized views to streamline the styling by filtering attributes at that level. The collaboration between Eurogeographics and IDOX guarantees consistent, optimized styles across scales and countries in the OME platform. So in terms of HVLSP iterative prototyping, so we took an iterative approach to enable continuous refinement. When we first started, it was just Belgium, France, and the Netherlands, and just trying to focus on areas including the key attribute selections, because there were some funny things that we found. Some countries would supply certain things and other countries wouldn't. So it was, you might have a point, or one country would supply points and then other countries would supply polygons. So just trying to make sure that we captured all of that. And current efforts at the moment centre around integrating the hydrography theme with the topological accuracy and seamless cross-border features. So we're looking at releasing that towards the end of this year, at the end of the project. So some of the challenges that we've faced, there were several challenges encountered and addressed during the development. So as you can see there with the administrative boundaries, so there was variable sizes for these boundaries across countries, which made labelling quite tricky. So admin, for example, the admin level 3 units that you can see in here in Belgium and the Netherlands, they really required careful font and placement and adjustments for readability. And also had issues with multi-polygon areas, for example, France and Corsica. So we labelled them by identifying and centering on the largest polygon, ensuring clarity even for island regions. In terms of zoom level visualization, so smaller admin units appear only at closer zoom levels, so more comes up the further in you zoom. And to manage overlapping boundaries with the admin units, we used a single colour but varying opacities, so that you could see that when the areas were darker, it would indicate overlapping boundaries without confusing users. Initially, in terms of port areas, we had filled it with opaque blue, but then we realised that then they'd look like water bodies, and they didn't necessarily look like water bodies. Thank you. So that was replaced with a dotted dark blue outline. Railroads, we were representing them in black, but sometimes in some places they were really dense, so we needed to take a different approach. So we've got grey lines and ensuring clarity while maintaining the detail. And in terms of user orientation, because we don't have a base map, and that is something that hasn't been implemented as yet. So we made sure that we have the international boundaries shown at smaller scales to help users find where they want to zoom into. Okay, so just quickly about the Open Cadastral Map, the other product that we've got. So this is a prototype map service that provides a central access point for authoritative INSPIRE compliant cadastral data from across Europe. So this was also developed by Eurogeographics under the OME2 project and co-funded by the European Union, as Ellen has said. And the whole purpose of it is to make European cadastral data more findable, accessible, and usable. And the map links we have within the platform, you can go to see the administrated units, cadastral parcels and zones, buildings and building parts, and addresses. So I might just skip over some because I've already been told that I've only got 5 minutes left. So the Open Cadastral Map development starts with INSPIRE compliant atom feeds from the participating countries. We've stored it in a Postgres database. Although while the data is INSPIRE compliant, there are variations to that. So we need to be quite flexible, consuming the data from these countries. We use the same tech stack as the HV LSP, including GeoServer and MapProxy. And we store the data and publish it via WMS, WMTS for viewing and GIS integration. But we don't supply downloads for this product. We point them to the official sites to get it from the supplier. 2 minutes remaining. I will just skip through and we'll go back to Alan so he can finish up.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Yeah, I think it's just by way of illustration. I mean, I think if this graph's extended back to 2020, it would be at zero essentially when they started. So essentially, there's been a kind of 500% increase almost over the term of the last three years of the project in terms of users subscribed to the data sets and making access and use of the portal itself. You can still see that the small scale products are still the most popularly used ones in the graph there, but starting to see some movement in terms of the Open Cadastral Map and the HVLSP data. But the target measures that were set out as part of the grant funding have been massively exceeded by the uptake and utilisation of the data. And it's across not just the public sector across Europe, it's also about a lot of commercial access and use of that data as well. It's just what they wanted to see was basically to liberate the access and use of that data across multiple industries. I wonder what the next phase could be called. Yeah. We're now talking about an OME3 essentially. The interesting thing about OME3 is there is no other funding from the EU towards the programme. So in the last 18 months or so, Eurogeographics and the members have had to look very closely and carefully at developing a sustainable business model to sit behind this going forward. There's still the intention that the open data products that are there will remain open. And yes, and they're free at the point of use, but they're not free in terms of actually the effort to create and maintain and sustain them. So what they are going to do is introduce another product, the ECRM. It's an FLA, Mike, not a TLA. The Eurocore Reference Map, which essentially is going to be the definitive large-scale pan-European product. It will supersede essentially the HVLSP open data that's there. It will become a premium commercially licensed product. The revenue from which will help to essentially be part of the sustainability of the model to ensure that all the other open data products continue to remain open and be sustained into the future. And the aim is by 2028 is to have full EU27 coverage of the ECRM product at that point. Meantime, it's still about maintaining, supporting all the other products that are there, and starting to look at potentially in the future the derivation of some of the small scale products from ECRM as part of the way forward as well. So there's quite big ambitions, I think, attached to the next 3-year phase. It's not yet been agreed, but we're currently in discussion, and we think it will kick in from January next year when OME2 finishes in December. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, complex challenges at a data and technical level, but we are happy. I know Eurogeographics are very happy with the results, and as is the European Commission and the members. So yeah, a good success story, we hope, all founded on, the theme of open data and open source tech. So thank you.
We have 4 minutes for any questions. Anyone?
It may be more of a political question. I don't know what I'm going to say yet. But I suppose I'm just wondering how this sort of sits alongside OpenStreetMap and things like that. Have you used it for ground truthing or those kinds of things, or is it more versions of the same thing?
It's a good question, and probably it's a question more for Eurogeographics than it is for us as the technical partner.
Can you repeat?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I think the question was, how does the open data products being created through ME stack up against OpenStreetMap? Is it a competitor? Is it complementary? I think my understanding, and again, we'd have to speak to Eurogeographics, is they do see it as a complementary product. I think there are levels of additional detail in the open data being created by Eurogeographics from its members. And I think the big strength is its definitive data coming from those agencies directly. So it's definitively sourced. And it's fully harmonized and fully edge matched as part of that process. And I'm not saying OSM is or it isn't, but I think they want to put a kind of stamp of quality coming from those definitive sources onto the product set. So has there been any validation between the two products? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? If there's been any sort of validation between OpenStreetMap and the derived product?
I couldn't say.
We can take that one away. I actually don't know the answer to that one, I'm afraid, but we can take that away and find out.
I thought that was going to be a boundaries question or talking about political questions. Oh.
Just building on that, because if that's open data, is there anything to stop people using that in OpenStreetMap?
No, I mean, it's under a CC BY license, so I mean, I think it's just, you just need to acknowledge the attribution, essentially. That's all, I would have thought. But again, we'll probably best to check with your geographics, but I can't see why not. I mean, it's in the open market and it's under the most open license available. So
to be something to promote, to allow OpenStreetMap contributors to take that data and use it.
Well, there's nothing stopping them from doing that now.
Yeah, but I think to promote it, that's an added value to the product that it's being used to support OSM and how that adds value to the economy and stuff like that.
I think. No, that's a really good point. A really good point. Yeah.
I think we had another question.
Just a quick one. These are exclusively onshore data sets.
They are at this point. I think, are they?
We just need to repeat the question.
Oh, sorry.
Are they exclusively onshore data sets?
My understanding is yes, they are at this point in time.
There's a similar offshore one in Modnet.
Right.
Freely available offshore European-wide.
Yeah, these are certainly onshore. I don't know, again, if there's any conversations happening between Eurogeographics and those other bodies in terms of the potential to to bring those product sets together. Don't know at this point. Again, we can go and find out.
Yeah.
But yeah, onshore at the moment.
So do we have any more questions? No, that's covered everything. Excellent.
Thank you, everybody.
Very much.
Appreciate it.